Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Dan Malthrop, Chief Executive here at the City Club, and welcome to our latest installment in our Business Leader Series. Today we're going to take a look at a remarkable story in the business of global healthcare, and it's a story with local roots. To discuss the Cleveland Clinic's expansion into Abu Dhabi, we're joined by the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, and CEO of Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, Dr. Marc. Now, this series is this business leader series that we do. It's about taking a moment with the people who are creating the trends that are shaping the future of our business world. And we've had CEOs of global companies, venture capital investors, and it may seem a little odd to bring Cleveland Clinic leadership into this. They're just a nonprofit, just a little nonprofit, right? But when you think about it, the Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi healthcare narrative is really one of those stories that's shaping the future of the globe and the future of business. So we'll examine it today not only from a healthcare perspective, but also from a business point of view. Our speakers, both of them, are very well known to most of you, I think. Dr. Cosgrove has been at the clinic since 1975 when he joined as a heart surgeon. He was only 3 feet high. He's been at the helm for the last decade. Marc joined the clinic in 1999 wearing short pants and has had a series of leadership posts there. He was the Cleveland Clinic's Chief Medical Operations Officer before taking on the role of as CEO for the Abu Dhabi operation. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And as usual, the second half of our program is devoted to questions from all of you. But for right now, let's dive right in. So, Toby, there's a kind of a context question that needs to be answered at the very beginning. Why Abu Dhabi, of all the gin joints in all the world, right? Yeah.
Well, it's a really interesting history. It turns out that we have operated about 50 years ago on the King of Saudi Arabia heart twice. And as a result of that, we had a big population of people coming from the Middle East. And at 9/11, before 9/11, we were seeing about 35 cardiac surgical patients a month from the Middle East. And at 9/11, in 2 weeks, it went to 5. And at that point, my predecessor, Dr. Loop, said, well, why don't we meet them halfway? We'll go to London and meet them partway there. And so we went to London. We looked at a hospital. We looked at a greenfield. We looked at all kinds of opportunities. In the meantime, word sort of got out that we were looking to do something internationally. And we had a flood of inquiries from all kinds of strange things from all over the world, multiple countries. And what happened was Dubai approached us and wanted us to come to Dubai. We spent about a year and a half looking at that and realized that really wasn't our model. That was really a real estate sale.
They had an existing hospital?
They had an existing land that they wanted us to come and build and bring the Cleveland Clinic there. And in the meantime, as we were making this recognition, it wasn't exactly in our strong point. We said we got an opportunity and an invitation to look at Abu Dhabi. And I had set up 5 criteria for doing something internationally. One, it had to be in a stable country. It had to have stable leadership. It had to have a long-term contract because we wanted to we thought the way you delivered value was and brought culture was over a long period of time. It had to be no financial investment for the Cleveland Clinic, and it had to be a financial return to the institution. And Abu Dhabi met all those, besides being a terrific ally of the United States and being one of the most stable countries.
Those are high criteria. If you're trying to meet all 5, you could meet 1 or 2 of those, but all 5, I mean, were there any other possibilities on the planet?
That was the best we saw going away.
Okay.
So when somebody offers you that sort of an opportunity, we took it and we began to discuss it. And I sat down with Sheikh Mohammed, who is the crown prince there and the ruler of Abu Dhabi. It seemed to me like, A, he was a stable, reliable ally, and 2, our desires met in terms of having a cultural transfer, and I said it was going to take a long period of time to bring the culture of the Cleveland Clinic to a place like that, and he was completely on board with it. So in 2005, we signed the contract. In 2007, we started construction, and in 2015, we opened.
Can you describe a little bit about what it looks like from their point of view? Because you basically removed all the risk for most of the risk. There's still risk, and we can talk about that later. But from stable country, stable leadership, long-term contract, no financial investment. You removed a lot of the potential downside there. What did it look like from their point of view? Because they're sinking hundreds of millions into this, and initially plus hundreds of millions in an ongoing basis.
Yeah, they are trying to build a country, and part of building a country is the infrastructure that goes with the country, and one of the parts of the infrastructure is healthcare. And so they were making an investment in the future of their country, and you can't attract people from all over the world unless you have reliable, high-quality healthcare.
And they have
Marc.
they call it the 2020 vision, and it's been sponsored by Sheikh Mohammed. And it's really about creating a diversified economy that's not based solely on petrochemicals. And so the things they've been trying to fill in, just as Toby said, it's education, it's the arts, it's healthcare. It's the things that will take this really incredible city and make it a truly world-class destination for corporate headquarters and for big deals to be done and for people to want to move there. And a lot of it, the healthcare piece is huge. People are very excited to move to Abu Dhabi. They're even more excited now that they can get very contemporary healthcare.
And just for example, NYU now has a big campus there, and they accept people from all over the world, and they have very high-quality students as a result.
I love that Abu Dhabi has a little of Cleveland, a little of New York, probably some Paris.
They do. They have the Louvre.
The Louvre, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So, Marc, when did you get involved in the project? Because I have a feeling you weren't in those early conversations that Toby
I was not.
having.
In fact, in the early days, I asked my wife, I said, if Toby ever asked us to go, would you? She said, are you kidding me? And
like, of course, or no way?
No.
Yeah.
And but come 2011, our lives were different. The project was different. And when that opportunity came, we leapt at it. It was actually a very easy decision. It's an opportunity to make really profound change in a country, as Toby said, that is progressive, is thoughtful, is developing faster than any place in the world, and with all those criteria that he laid out. And that opportunity to make change was very appealing to us. What I didn't expect is that we were actually going to love the place. So I thought the project was going to be great, but we didn't expect that we were going to make deep friendships, that we were going to appreciate the culture, that was going to help our family grow, and I think that was what was really the most pleasant surprise.
So you've opened the door to kind of a personal question, Marc, and I hope you'll forgive me for asking it. But a nice Jewish doctor from the east side of Cleveland moves to the Arab world and loves it.
Right.
Say more.
I'll say it really simply: people are people, right? And what we find with our friends there is they want exactly the same things that everyone else wants. They want security, they want to educate their kids, they want to have a future. And I think what people don't understand about the UAE is that, as Toby said, it is a safe, stable place. I will tell you, I've certainly heard many more anti-Semitic remarks in Cleveland in the U.S. than I ever have heard in the UAE, because I've never heard an anti-Semitic remark in the UAE, ever.
Huh. One of the big challenges that you have with doing a project like this has to do with taking the culture that you build at the Cleveland Clinic up the street here on Euclid Avenue, and you're really you're exporting it and trying to create this sort of outpost that still has not just the Cleveland Clinic's name on the building, but it feels like the Cleveland Clinic on the inside, and it's not just because the walls are painted white. So how do you do that?
50 Shades of White.
50 Shades.
You should ask him for a follow-up on that one.
Oh, do tell. No, but seriously, so what was the plan for that?
Well, we have had experience in the past with Florida and with Canada, and we realized that in order to take the culture, you have to put the DNA there. And the same thing that law firms have learned and accounting firms have learned is you move someplace, you have to take your DNA. So we were convinced right from the start that the leadership really needed to come from Cleveland. We could have gone out and searched all over the place and found people who were willing to go, and other organizations had done that. But we thought that we wanted to have the DNA, and that's one of the reasons that leadership has come from Cleveland, and that's one of the reasons that the leadership of all of our portions of it have come from Cleveland and from the Cleveland Clinic. And if you look at it right now, Marc will tell you more about how we recruited doctors, but a third of them now are from Cleveland.
A third.
Yeah,
How else are you recruiting them?
We either trained them or they came directly from our system.
Mm-hmm. Do you, the ones who aren't from Cleveland, do you send them to Cleveland for finishing school?
Actually, we do. So just a couple of quick statistics. In all fairness, Tom Mihailovich, who's the chief of staff, he did the recruiting.
Uh-huh.
So some high-level facts. So 80% of our institute chiefs are from main campus. Mm-hmm. We had 9,000 applications for 175 doctor jobs.
You what?
We had 9,000 applications for 175 jobs, and we didn't spend a penny on recruiters. So we did it in the same way that. So this is one of our big questions going in was, what was our brand going to be like when it came to getting doctors to come work very far away from where most of them were coming from? And it turns out that of the 175 that we recruited, 80% are U.S. boarded, 20% are Western European boarded, and about a third of them are full professors, so very sophisticated group of people.
What attracted them to it? Were you going to say something?
No.
Yes? No?
Okay. So I think what attracted them, probably it's the clinic more than anything, right? So what we found is people wanted to work in this group practice model that allows physicians to do what they do best, which is take care of patients. If you think about what we do, we put structure around people that allows them to serve people in an effective fashion. And I think that was really quite resonant. I'll share another personal story. Our son was badly injured in Germany about a year into the time that I was at the clinic. And he got spectacular care. We ended up life-flighting him back to Cleveland for the end of his convalescence. But right before I left Germany, I took his neurosurgeon to lunch, and I said, "How'd you like to come to Abu Dhabi?" And he is now one of our neurosurgeons. And the reason he came, he was a department chair at age 40, which is unheard of in Europe. He came for an opportunity to innovate and to grow and be part of something that was big and special.
And I think we slipped on a few patients. We were just our most recent recruit was the busiest cardiac surgeon at Mayo Clinic, who was formerly a Rhodes Scholar. Uh-huh. So we had to drop our bar a little bit.
Is that a dig at the Mayo Clinic?
No.
Or
Never would I say a bad word.
So the recruiting the doctors ended up not being hard at all.
What about recruiting the rest of the staff?
Early days, it was tough because we were an unproven entity, and there are many projects in the Middle East that get started and never get finished. And so it's always easier to recruit the 401st person than the 41st person. Mm-hmm. But at this point, attracting top talent from around the world is it's easy. Mm-hmm. People come to us, and we have access to the best and the brightest, and the global talent pool has been very good to us.
But culture...
Marc, go ahead. Say a little bit about the logistics of the number of people that you brought in, how many work there, where they come from.
Okay, thanks. So we actually, when I started, we had about 50 people.
Here, I'll be back in like 10 minutes. I'm just kidding.
Just kidding.
Sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. I wouldn't have known. Go ahead.
So we've grown that 50 people to about 3,500 people now, and in the last year we've added about 2,000 people to the team. So at certain points we're adding 50 to 60 people a day, and that includes mass onboarding them. Whole airplanes filled with Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi people coming from around the world, having folks meet them at the airport, having their accommodations taken care of. It's unlike being a CEO here. Probably the closest thing is more like being in the military, where you transport people, you house them, you feed them, you clothe them. It's a very different model.
So have you created housing for all the staff as well? Has that been part of the
Certain
the
parts
deal?
of the population we provide housing for if they choose to take it. Others people my wife and I just live in a house in the city, regular house.
So culture isn't just the doctors. or just the doctors and the nurses. It's also the phlebotomists. It's also the everybody, the receptionist and the janitors and all of that stuff. You're not obviously hiring all of those people from Cleveland or
Right.
Western Europe or where the doctors are coming from. And many, I would assume, are coming from a geographically closer talent pool. How is that working out? And are those people taking the culture, infusing the culture into their own DNA?
Yes, they are. So we have 67 nationalities working at Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi right now. And it is an absolutely, if you like diversity, it's the best place in the world to work. Lots of people do come sort of locally or regionally. We address this very head-on with our onboarding process, talks a lot about cultural competence, and we have ongoing series to make sure that people understand how to talk to each other and work with each other. But like I said, people are people, and it's actually one of the most fun parts of my job is to just watch people when we have a community event from all over the world in different national dresses, different skin colors, different religions, different native languages, all doing their thing together and coexisting peacefully around patients first, which resonates with everyone, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Toby, what have you seen happen in Abu Dhabi that you have not seen before in your career, and you've said, oh, we've got to get more of that back in Cleveland?
Well, I think what we did, we have to understand that nobody has done this before. Mm-hmm. There was no say, oh, well, they've done this before. We hadn't done it before. When we got the contract, we said, we can do that. We'll do that. And then we said, how are we going to do that? Mm-hmm. And because there was no roadmap to follow. And so this has been essentially us getting an opportunity to learn, mm-hmm. and us getting an opportunity to explore how the culture gets transferred and how the culture gets assimilated into a new environment. And essentially, Marc and Tommy Mahalovic have written the book on that. And there's been a tremendous amount of time and thought that has gone into this by all the leadership here. We talk about it twice a week with my CEO meeting when Marc comes in visually from Abu Dhabi to have that connection. And so the whole business of picking the land, picking the architect, designing the building, figuring out how to bring it up out of the ground, then staffing it, protocols, electronic medical records, etc., has all had to been figured out. And by the way, this is the most wired hospital in the world right now. Mm-hmm. It is just is incredibly modern facility, and it's all had to be adopted and learned in a new environment. Mm-hmm.
So we actually did something that we started something about a year and a half ago that I call the Playbook Project, which is to take all those learnings, and we've actually codified everything. Uh-huh. And so what I've
always... Give us an example.
How do you run a recovery room outside an operating room? So how do you staff it, what the protocols are, what the standard operating procedures are, what's the medical equipment that goes into it, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And there are tons of great hospitals all over the world who can start a new recovery room, but they do it based on institutional knowledge. Uh-huh. And what we've done is we've actually codified this, and what I say, whether it's India or Indiana, we can do this again. Mm-hmm.
So this is a place where you've got a completely different customer base than the North American customers mm-hmm. you've been serving for the last century. And there's a different set of expectations there. What are you, and also, patients behave a certain way in North America, right? They treat their doctors in a certain way. They follow their doctor's advice X% of the time. I don't know what it is. You probably do. Not ever. I don't know. But what is it? I mean, Marc, what are the patients like in Abu Dhabi? How are your customers different, and how are you having to accommodate your delivery?
So they're more the same than they are different.
Okay.
So people don't want to be in pain. They want to be made better. They want to be treated with respect. They want to be talked to clearly. So those commonalities are absolutely the same. Mm-hmm. Differences are relatively trivial. Mm-hmm. So it's people tend to move in large family groups, larger than here in the U.S. Oftentimes the discussant with you when you're working with a patient, it may be another member of the family is actually having that conversation on behalf of the patient, with that patient there, of course.
Right.
Really relatively small differences. There are very high expectations for service in the Middle East. I think that is very different. And wait times that we would find spectacular here, some people don't like them there. They're still a little bit long. Yeah.
Really?
So it's it's a very service-driven culture, and we have adapted, and we follow our patient experience scores very carefully, and we're knocking it out of the park right now. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Have you had to, in terms of the architecture, the spaces, if you've got larger family groups, a larger family group might have different expectations about what they can and can't do in the room, in the patient room, and in the waiting room, have you had to make architectural accommodations or?
I think one of the major architectural accommodations is the artwork. You use no images across the. I mean, you wouldn't find a mural that looked like that any place in the UAE or in Islamic culture.
Yeah,
no graven images.
Representational art is not okay. So it's lots of calligraphy, and actually photography is fine. So we actually have lots and lots of photography in the hospital.
But not photography of people.
Actually, photography of people is okay, but
okay.
Paintings of people are not okay.
It's an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I think is that I'm delighted to be here to talk about this, because one of the biggest misconceptions in Cleveland is, why on earth would the Cleveland Clinic go and invest their money in Abu Dhabi? And in fact, I think the thing that we have to realize is we didn't invest our money in Abu Dhabi. They built the building, they're paying the salary, and they're paying us a consulting and management fee. So essentially, it is an opportunity to retrieve money to Cleveland that allows us to do things in Cleveland we couldn't do otherwise.
What are the risks? Because there must be some.
Well, I think the risks, I'll tell you what the risks are, and I think Marc will comment on this as well. I think the risks are reputational risks and operational risks. And the operational risk is, can we get it up and make it happen? And the reputational risk is, if we fail at that or we fail at the care, it tarnishes our reputation.
Marc?
Exactly. So in the couple months since we've been open, we've seen patients from 23 different countries already. The whole world medically is watching us, and we have to deliver. And so I think it is a brand and reputational risk from a business standpoint. And as clinicians, we certainly would never want to fail a patient either.
There have been other previous movers in this market who have failed. What lessons have you learned from their failure? I mean, I think some of it is a business model kind of thing, but...
Well, I think it's a business model, and I also think that it is a objective on how long you're going to be there, and the fact that what you're there to deliver. Many of the people who went there in the past went because it was a huge economic opportunity, they thought. And they had a short-term view of making a lot of money in a short period of time and leaving. That was not our objective at all. Our financial returns are relatively modest, and our objective is very long-term.
How long-term is long-term? What's your contract?
We have a 15-year contract from the time that we open.
15 years. Is there any... what would make that unworkable? I mean, is there, or what would be, I mean, I imagine like there's a supply line concerns, or, like here in Cleveland, where to get everything you need. Everybody knows who the vendors are and how to get what you need. It's obviously a very cosmopolitan city. I can see you doing that kind of, this is a real city, but it's still, your vendor relationships have to change, right?
Relationships change. Some things are less well developed than others. There have certainly been some supply chain issues. I was smiling to myself because just before we opened, we realized that as we were going through the final checklist, we didn't have a medicine called dantrolene, which is used for a rare problem that happens in the OR. My chief operating officer went out with his credit card and bought dantrolene and brought it back to the. It was like one of those startup kind of things. Whatever it takes, we're going to get. So we've had to be really creative in ways that you don't in a developed, but that's also the fun of it too. It's been great.
And it's everything from dantrolene to hand soap. and
Yeah.
cleaning supplies and bed sheets.
Around your question about what's unworkable, in my
Yeah.
mind, the only thing that would be unworkable is if we were asked to do something that was unethical, which we've certainly never been asked to do, or to breach what I'd consider to be a Cleveland Clinic ethos in how we take care of patients. And it was interesting. Early on, I got tested a few times. And,
How so?
Just asked to modify staffing patterns and ratios and where people would come from and what their qualifications would look like. And I drew a very bright line about what I thought was really okay and not okay. And once that was established, our partners have actually been fantastic. And they respect us for wanting to make sure that our brand is appropriately replicated and patients are cared for the right way.
That's really interesting. So was that more of a kind of a moment where, because there wasn't a line that was clear, they were sort of asserting some authority, and then what was needed wasn't necessarily pushback, was just saying, no, this is how this actually works. We're the healthcare experts you hired.
What do you think, Toby?
Well, I think that you get tested on this all the time. I've been tested by Sheikh Mohammed as to whether I was going to be straightforward with him or not on a couple of occasions. He knew the answer before and asked the question, and he was waiting to see if I was truthful with him. And so you do get tested.
Yeah.
What I think is they really want to be sure that we're truly invested and that we're not in it just for the money. And so when Toby told His Highness the truth, was probably a hard truth, that he asked you a tough question, that did a lot for their relationship. And when they asked me to potentially bend on something that they knew I probably shouldn't bend on, they wanted to see whether I was a serious Cleveland Clinic leader or I was just a person there to mark time and get the project open regardless of whether it was going to be high fidelity or not.
That's fascinating.
But the other thing is you cannot realize the magnitude of this physical facility. This is a building that's 22 stories tall and 4 million square feet. And as I always like to say, the main lobby is 2 football fields long. This is a big physical facility and has the potential of having 500 beds. And to put that in perspective, that's about half the size of our main campus in terms of number of bed capacity.
My Lord, that's massive.
Yeah, the internal volume is bigger than that of the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world.
How many patients, how many beds are occupied today?
So we've staffed 150 beds. We have about a third of them full. We saw our first outpatient on May the 15th. And 98 days later, we had all services open, including heart surgery, brain surgery, critical care transport, the whole thing. And so volumes are growing every day. Today we did 17 surgeries. We had 2 critical care transports, including somebody from outside the country. It's getting busier and busier.
Obviously, 2 months isn't enough time to declare victory. What is success?
Well, I think success is measured on a very long-term basis. I mean, the agreement was that we went there and they wanted the Cleveland Clinic culture.
Yes.
And so the Cleveland Clinic culture, I told them this is a 15-year project. And we expect that one day this will be populated in large measure by Emirates that have come along, and we have a sustainable organization. And if someday the Emirates ran the facility, we would have declared victory.
How long are you going to be there, Marc?
TBD.
Toby, obviously this is an experiment in some ways and sort of proving out a business model that may or may not be replicable. Where else are you looking?
I'd like to tell you where we're looking, but...
I would too.
Yeah. I'm going to the airport right now.
Well, you said you got another half hour.
Yeah, to go overseas.
Okay.
And we're looking at major cities, other locations.
All right. Well, that's suitably vague for a man in your position. All right. We're going to make the transition to the audience Q&A. And I've got some official things to read here. So today we're enjoying a special Business Leader Series forum featuring, as you know, Dr. Toby Cosgrove, Chief Executive Officer at the Cleveland Clinic, and Dr. Marc Harrison, Chief Executive Officer, Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi. I encourage you to organize your questions for our speaker now and ask that your questions be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those joining us via our live web stream, which is provided by our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, or one of the many radio stations across the region and country that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Be sure to join us on Wednesday, September 9th, as we welcome Thomas Curry, Comptroller of the Currency from the Department of the Treasury. For more information about our upcoming and past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. Today's forum is our annual Forum on the Power of Ideas, made possible by the guests of the City Club's 75th anniversary celebration. We thank all of you for your support. And today we welcome guests at tables hosted by the sponsors of our Business Leaders series, including Huntington Bank, Falls Communications, Fredonia, Inside Business, Level 7, Life Bank, and Meaden, and more. We thank you all very much for your support. We also welcome guests at tables hosted by Bostwick Design Partnership, the Cleveland Clinic, Northeast Ohio Medical University, and PNC. Thank you very much for your support. And now it's time for our traditional City Club Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are City Club Content Associate Teddy Eisenberg and Office Assistant Wesley Allen. Our first question, please.
Thank you so much for this interesting forum. I have one question for each of our panelists, if that's okay.
Sure.
My question for Marc is, when this facility opens up in Abu Dhabi, did you have to bring any medical interpreters, cultural brokers from the U.S., or do you recruit locally? And my question to Toby is, do you have any plans to have facilities in Asia, particularly big countries like China or India? Thank you.
I got the easy question, I think.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have interpreters, and we have, it's primarily interpreters for Arabic and Urdu, which are the two primary non-English languages that pop up in the hospital. And we also have trained some of our nursing unit coordinators, who are primarily Emirati women, to, in addition to serving their purpose as secretarial work on the unit, that they also have been trained in some basic medical interpretation, so if there's an emergency, we can use them as well. I will say about a third of our docs actually speak Arabic, and about a third of the nurses do as well. So I think we tend to be pretty well covered.
So I think I have to put in perspective to answer your question. This was a very big venture for the Cleveland Clinic, and this stretched us as an organization. It stretches in terms of talent, it stretches in terms of attention units, and we made an active decision not to undertake any more major projects until such time as we had this up and running. We've had multiple approaches from both China and India. We've looked in the past at 3 times in China at doing looking at an opportunity there, but we do not actively have any plans underway in either one of those countries, but we continue to survey the world for opportunities.
Next question.
Yeah, this what you're talking about sounds great. Do you plan to rotate any of the staff from one facility over there over to here? I think that would be wonderful because we would learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, first of all, the standard contract in Abu Dhabi is 3 years. 4 years. Yeah. Sorry. 4 years.
Exactly. That's what you meant.
That's what I meant. 4 years, and with the idea being that hopefully we can, people will want to, some will want to stay longer, but we also hope that people will come back to the Cleveland Clinic. This is not a rotation where you go over and spend 6 months and come back, or 2 weeks. This is go live in Abu Dhabi, be part of the scene and the culture there and the community, and hopefully we'll recruit these people back. These are great individuals, as Marc described to you earlier, and we'd be happy to have them on our faculty here.
And Toby did something that has been very, very helpful to us as far as this exchange. Is early days, he said that we needed to go ahead and get each of the institute chairs from here over to give lectures. And I know that was really a diplomacy trip you were sending them on, right?
Yeah, right.
And so they came back with an appreciation, and I think that helped them send us talent. And now that talent is coming back as well. Today, actually, our Chief of Medical Operations and our Chief of Staff both operating at the clinic. So it still goes both ways.
Next question.
How do you separate yourself from other hospitals in the region? How do you market yourself in that area? And can I get a same-day appointment in Abu Dhabi?
You can, as long as you don't need to see a pediatric ophthalmologist, you're fine. We'll get you in. So the differentiation is actually we bring this group practice model that just simply doesn't exist in the region. In the region, almost everybody is fee-for-service, or if they're salaried, they're in very low productivity hospitals. And so we do the same thing in Abu Dhabi that we do here, which was we pay people fair salaries, and we give them lots of opportunities to grow and develop, and we expect them to work really hard. And that resonates with the doctors, and it seems to resonate with the patients. The other thing that we do is since we are not fee-for-service on a physician level, we have very low use of pharmaceuticals, laboratory tests, and imaging, very unlike the rest of the region, where an average doctor's appointment has about 8 prescriptions per visit in the country as a whole. We average about 1.8. So I think that people are seeing the difference in how they're talked to, how they're cared for, and how their care is organized, and how resources are used. Does that answer your question? Thanks.
In terms of marketing, Tom, we have not been marketing at this point, but that because we didn't want to overwhelm ourselves to start with.
Yeah, the marketing's getting turned on right now. We've done a fair bit of social media. We've got about almost 400,000 followers in social media at this point. And in the last couple weeks, we've generated about 1,200 visits via social media. But the whole marketing campaign has not been turned on yet.
Real quick, how is healthcare paid for there? They obviously don't have an employer-based health insurance system that is the best in the world.
So it's there's universal coverage in Abu Dhabi. So if you're going to live there and have a residency visa, you must be insured. And there's different levels of insurance. There is the locals, the Emirates, have a insurance product they use an insurance company essentially as a TPA, a third-party administrator. The rest of us work with a sort of a set of quasi-private insurance companies. And we do pay premiums, but I believe they're relatively subsidized to make things attractive to business.
Ahlan wa Salan, Desiree Caligari, Mayor from Cleveland Heights University Heights, responsible for partnerships and also the Fulbright Association. And I'm a big fan of Dubai because I worked for the State Department overseas 5.5 years ago. And after working in Asia and Europe, I came back and that's all I could talk about was Cleveland Clinic starting this project in itself and bridging connections globally. And my question is directed towards you after working also in the private sector with Siemens and Alcatel in Paris and Berlin. My concern is ultimately in regards to global education. I know that you have an Office of Civic Education that has done extensively projects, and we thank you graciously for the projects that you have done with our community here. But what are your plans in terms of bridging that new capacity of knowledge as well as expertise or possible expertise of students who want to pursue the medical field or other fields relative to the medical field and also in that region? And the last factor, community service. A strong believer of what you put into the pot, you receive back. What are your aspirations in terms of probably building even a global community service bridge program or something of that nature?
Marc, you get all the easy questions. You take this.
So let me make sure there's sort of a two-part question there. The second part was around community service. I can't speak for the clinic as a whole. I can share with you that in Abu Dhabi, we've actually focused extensively on wellness since we got there. And we've sponsored running events and cycling events and the first bike to work day. And if you go to the F1 track where they race the cars, every Tuesday night it's closed and we have this year we'll have 400 free bikes that people can ride, and about 2,000 people every week go and ride bikes there. So we're trying to serve, be the place where if you're really sick, it's a great place to go, but also try and keep the community well. From an educational front, were you at our board meeting on Monday? Because this actually was one of the things that we talked about is as we enter stable operations, how do we begin to build out the research and education components of a really first-class medical center? And Toby and our board chair from Abu Dhabi and I had a conversation, and that's coming up next.
And by the way, we have done a lot by bringing Emiratis here to participate in our facilities and then help carry that culture back. So that's part of our ongoing education.
Great. Thank you for that question.
So what's the general state of healthcare in the Emirates? Do health disparities exist? And if so, where do you see this? And how is the clinic participating, if they do exist, to eliminate those?
Well, I think you do see that the state of healthcare in the Emirates is not what you'd expect to see in the United States. Much of it is very infantile, and it's getting up and off the ground. It's also, you have to recognize, it's a small population. In the population, the volume of cases drives the quality over time, and it's very dispersed at this point without really a system. What we hope to do is fill a niche over there for things that they particularly don't have. So that's, this hospital is directed at that. As far as the hospital is open to people across the entire organization, across the whole country. So it's not that we're only looking at it for people at high end, but in fact, anybody that's got a heart problem, we'll look after.
Yeah, Toby's exactly right. So I don't believe we have healthcare disparities in the way that the U.S. does. So everyone is covered. I think the care is actually fairly consistent, and it's not. It's in many places very good. It's just not coordinated. I think that's the. So they're very smart doctors. They're very smart nurses. There's some individually quite capable hospitals, but you don't get that coordinated care around a complicated problem that people have come to expect here, and specifically from the clinic. CCAD, we accept lots of different insurances, but not everyone. But one of the things that we said from the very beginning is that, and our partner Mubadala has been terrific on this front, we've said if there's a patient who has a life-threatening issue and only we can take care of it, we're going to take care of them regardless of their ability to pay, which is the right thing to do. And then that's what we're doing right now. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
In the United States, we have kind of a preconceived notion of what gender equality and gender treatment looks like in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could comment on how, if at all, that has affected either the way that Cleveland Clinic operates there or patient treatment, whatever.
Well, just like here, I have to listen to my wife all the time. I think that, thanks for asking this question, Morris. The UAE has, I think, is a leader in that region and probably on a par with the rest of the world in terms of what kind of roles women have. So, for instance, the Director General of the regulator, the Health Authority of Abu Dhabi, is an Emirati woman who's an endocrinologist. She's very smart. She's terrific. There are women who function at the minister level of government. So there are, I think, from a business standpoint, there's really no difference. There are some cultural sensitivities about how you examine, if I'm a male physician, how I examine a female patient. And I think in many instances, just like here, there are a lot of men who'd rather see a male urologist or women who'd rather see a woman OBGYN. Those sorts of differences exist there also, but I will tell you that patients mostly want to get better, and they're very happy to see whatever doctor is going to give them the best chance of getting better.
I think the other thing you have to understand is that if Marc's wife and my wife go there with me, they don't have to be covered. They can drive. And that is very different than you might find, for example, in Saudi Arabia. It's a very different culture. And every woman that I have ever been there with has felt very comfortable, and many of the team from the Cleveland Clinic have gone there and been very at ease. In fact, my wife keeps asking me when we're going to move to Abu Dhabi.
So I'd also remind you that when the UAE became involved in the fight against ISIS, that the first bombing raid was led by a Emirati woman fighter pilot. Okay. So,
That says a lot.
yes.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I used to be a chaplain resident at Cleveland Clinic when it changed from the pastoral care department to the spiritual care department. And I'm also a professor of comparative religion. And I was just wondering, with such a large, diverse population, how do you address the spiritual care needs of the patients and the staff?
It's a great question. So I'm learning a lot over in the UAE. And one of the things I've learned is that many of our Muslim patients have a very direct spiritual relationship with God, and they actually neither ask for nor particularly want a stranger to come in and mediate that relationship, even when they are in physical or emotional distress. This is one of the questions I had early on, and what they would like is they would like their family members to be there with them and to engage in spirituality. For the rest of the staff, we do have support in all different kinds of ways for them, ranging from the spiritual to the psychological to health, et cetera. So I think we've tailored it for the population. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Cosgrove, I have a question about the management, talent development, and continuous education, especially in the transformative industry as healthcare is today, and in the light of having the presence in the another world, if you will, with another type of culture. Of course, drawing on the fact that this month we are starting in partnership with Weatherhead, executive MBA for the Cleveland Clinic executive management training. I was just wondering, how are you, to what extent will you be leveraging the resources of an institution as Weatherhead in order to manage the healthcare the way it is today in the United States, and to maybe export that discipline to your Abu Dhabi presence? Thank you.
Okay, this basically talks about how we develop leadership, and we think that leadership development really comes in two categories. One, it comes in experience, which is probably 80 to 90% of developing leaders, and the second part is the academic portion of it. And that's part of the reasons that we partnered up with Weatherhead, because we think that there is a tremendous demand across the entire world for administrative leadership in healthcare, and in our organization as well. The second sort of aspect of our leadership development is we have expanded the number of opportunities where people get leadership experience amongst our physicians particularly. For example, we now have almost 250 physicians in some sort of leadership opportunity to get that experience, and we think that, and we have put together now a program for evaluating leadership and people of high potential, and giving them the appropriate experience that would allow them to continue to move up the leadership ranks. So we in the past have used a lot of MBA schools, Harvard and Weatherhead, et cetera, and we think now it's important that we really concentrate with Weatherhead.
Thank you. In line with the cultural differences over there. Yeah, it's me. Hi. Are the healthcare privacy, the HIPAA laws, are they all the same as what we experience here in the United States, or are they a little different over there? How does that all work?
So there are no HIPAA laws in the UAE yet. We adhere to the same standards we would adhere to here in the U.S. CCAD sits on an island that has now a global free trade zone and It's going to be governed by English law, and those privacy rules are yet one step more strict and onerous than HIPAA. So we will need to adhere to those after that change is made.
And I might just add, as part of the communication, that we have brought our electronic medical record there, so it connects directly with all the rest of our facilities all over the world. So, you know, the communication is kept within that single media.
Yeah, I'll give you a really discrete example. So we saw a gentleman who had liver failure, and he was very sick. We got him stabilized, determined he needed a liver transplant. We actually did the initial biopsy at CCAD. Results were reviewed over here at main campus. He has since come over to main campus. He'll get his liver transplant here, because we're not ready to do that at CCAD yet, and then he'll come back for his follow-up. So it's actually, you know, this is a degree of integration that most systems can't do between the east and west side of town, and I think we're beginning to do it now, right? I'm not saying Cleveland or anything, but we're actually doing it, you know, intercontinentally at this point. Yeah.
Are there a lot of surgeries like that are those high-level, very complicated surgeries that you're just sort of waiting on?
No, actually, almost none. The reason we're not doing liver transplants is the way that there's no cadaveric organ procurement in the UAE at this point in time. So we've already begun our robotic heart surgery program. We've already begun to deliver transcatheter heart valves. Mm-hmm. We've already begun to do endoscopic tumor removal for colon cancer. We're bringing all sorts of technologies that would be cutting edge anywhere in the world, and they're already in place at CCAD in 100 days.
And by the way, we also, and what we haven't mentioned here is we also run the largest general hospital, Sheikh Khalifa Medical City in Abu Dhabi. And we're administratively run that facility, and at that facility we started the first liver or the first kidney transplant program in Abu Dhabi.
Wow.
In terms of Abu Dhabi, what was your biggest surprise and maybe most uplifting moment?
My biggest surprise. People let their kids stay up really, really late there. So the desert is a very nocturnal culture, and I remember coming out of a movie at the mall at like 11 o'clock at night, and these kids were running up and down, and I thought, these parents are crazy, you know. Uplifting moments, clearly, you know, we worked so hard to get this hospital open. You know, it was 4.5 years. And of just very compulsive, difficult, creative work. And to see patients who are waiting to go in for an appointment or come out after an appointment or send us a letter that finally they're able to be served close to home, that feels really good. That's absolutely uplifting. Makes it all worthwhile.
What is the next, the next big job for you, Marc? Now that you're up and running, 100 days, congratulations. But like so now it's like, what have you put in place for that kind of iterative refinement that is a key to your success?
So I'm a little bit of an operations nerd, okay? And so we have a very robust continuous improvement process in place, and our next big task is to come to scale, right? Mm-hmm. A month ago, we were seeing about 125 patients a day. Today, we saw 410. So we're growing really fast. By the end of the year, we'll be seeing 1,000 patients a day.
Is that capacity?
1,000 patients a day will be about 2/3 of what we'll end up doing about 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. So capacity is probably 1,500 patients a day. Mm-hmm. And we did 17 surgeries today. You know, that's up from about 5 per day about a month ago. So bringing the place up to scale so we can really serve this population, that's the next big thing. And always watching safety, quality, patient experience obsessively to make sure we serve these people well.
And the population is growing as well as your capacity grows.
In the UAE?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Another question?
Frank Bird, given the magnitude of this project, was there ever a time when you thought to yourself, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Oh, yeah. I think it's safe to say when we undertook this project there was a consensus of one person who thought it was a good idea.
And how's your board today?
Yeah. And we took the board over there about 6 months ago, and I think their eyes, almost fell out of their heads. They were stunned at what had been accomplished. And it was a matter of, you have to remember that we are a group practice of 3,000 doctors. And of course, every one of them is smarter than the CEO. And there was a substantial amount of discussion about whether this was a great idea or not. There are times when we thought, is this all worth it? And I think that I am very glad we persevered. It has been a great growing experience for the entire organization. I think we're stronger because of it. We have more leadership because of it. We have expanded our brand because of it. And it is bringing us other opportunities that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And so I am absolutely pleased that we persevered and we got the people who actually did the work, who managed it as well as they did.
And Marc, how many times did you think to yourself, my God, what has Toby gotten me into?
Happened more than once, didn't it? We had a couple conversations, I recall, about.
Yes. And I think, in truth, and I expect many of you have had the same experience, when you're put down in an absolutely new situation, the first 6 months in a new city with a new job, you wonder why on earth you did this. And it takes about 6 months to a year to get past that, and then finally you realize that there are opportunities, and you fit in, and you know where the grocery store is, and you know where to get your hair cut. Those first 6 months are very difficult. And Marc has had to live through that, and I think that each person who's been brought on has had to live through that same first 6 months to a year acclimation. It is a period of getting acclimatized.
There were a number of people who said to me early days, what did you do that Toby sent you over there? I'm still waiting for the answer to that. Look, Toby's 100% right. That first 6 months is really tough. Happily, that's gotten a lot easier because we have a whole community now. And things actually run in an orderly fashion. But those early days were really the wild, wild east.
Well, I'm sure as the UAE begins to grow and the city grows as rapidly as it does, there'll be interest in establishing a free speech forum there and a speakers platform. So just let me know when the Sheikh wants to reach out.
Will do.
We're ready to serve.
We're on.
Okay, Toby, Cosgrove, Marc Harrison, congratulations on these early successes. We look forward to hearing about future successes, and thank you so much for being a part of this today.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Ladies and gentlemen, our forum is now adjourned.